While we were talking about other stuff here, Justin Jefferson was leading the charge to bring the NFL into Olympic flag football. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Today on the show, I've got a jam-packed show for you. We've got a lot to talk about from the league owners, or from the league rules meeting, or whatever you want to call it. There, big meeting in Minneapolis, where jam-packed show for you today. We have a lot to talk about from the league meetings in Eagan that had a lot of impacts on the NFL at large that aren't necessarily Vikings specific, but we should probably touch on that, as well as an entry into the Everyman Series later in the show. But first, there are three things major that happened that everybody was covering all week. We didn't really talk about it a lot on this show, but I did want to get there. One, the NFL approved NFL player participation in flag football in the Summer Olympics in 2028. They'll be in LA, and it'll be the first time that they've had flag football at all in the Olympics, right? And NFL players will be able to join. So you get this dream team style thing now every cycle in the Summer Olympics. There are some rules about how that's going to go down. We'll talk about that. Also, the tush push got banned and then wasn't, and it was a whole thing. I'll let the national reporters kind of go over how that went down, because it really, things seemed like they were going one way and then they went another way. And then the playoff format didn't change, which I'm sure we all have opinions about. But let's start with the flag football thing, because two Vikings players, Justin Jefferson, Brian Asamoah, were very heavily at the forefront, at the face of this whole thing. Justin Jefferson in particular is not that surprising a choice as somebody that played a lot of flag football. We just saw these guys playing flag football in the Pro Bowl, and the role, I guess, of flag football in the growth of football as a sport is, I think, more important than it gets credit for. However, for me, I don't find it interesting. I think it is missing what I love about football. And that's just me. That's just the way that my passions are organized. I'm not here to yuck anybody else's yum. So it's not a thing that I find a lot of super value in, but I understand it as a gateway point and long way into the future, a possible end point for a day when we decide that blood sports are no longer allowed. And it's not that crazy to me to imagine a world where CTE becomes too much of a problem, concussions become too much of a problem, and you have to you have to turn football into a non-contact sport and replace it with flag football. That might not be a day that I'm alive to see, but I could see it being something someday. And the other thing that flag football does is, in addition to being a sort of an alternative youth sport, for a lot of those reasons, a lot of parents, I find this all the time when I do the Everyman Series. Parents don't want their kids more and more to play football for those reasons. They don't want the concussions. They don't want the physicality. They don't want the injury risk. Go into a different sport. Play something. Go into wrestling if you want to. Like a contact physical sport. And flag football can be an alternative to that, so that really, really talented kids can still kind of show out and develop those skills. But without the physicality, without, turning their brains into oatmeal from the age of 5 up. That maybe is a good thing. That thing may come at the cost of, players entering college RAR and therefore entering the pros RAR. But that's probably worth it on a moral level. Look, I often struggle with the fact that my livelihood is tied to a blood sport. And I think calling it a blood sport is maybe an extreme word for a lot of people, but I don't think you can deny that this is a game that is put on for pure entertainment purposes, right? There's no other commodity here. It's entertainment and merchandise sales. And that people destroy their bodies for it. People do permanent damage to their health. They sacrifice their health for everyone else's entertainment. That is really uncomfortable sometimes. And I think the part of me that can't get into flag football is also kind of evil about that. And I struggle with that a little bit. My brain is torn between wanting the Olympics to just have some football. I think it would be kind of fun to see the best of France team play the best of Germany team, and even having, a dynamic like it is in basketball where someone like Brian Asamoah could maybe go play for the Ghana team, or, somebody who has immigrated could go play for their national team. There could be a dual citizenship thing. Where you don't just get all the American players playing for the American team. Obviously, that would kill everybody. But you're just not going to get that because the bargain of playing football is an expensive one. People just don't want to do that to just go get absolutely lit up by Joey Bosa. That's not going to happen to anybody. So here we are. We have flag football. So it's 2028. That's a while away. You got to understand that's 4 seasons away. Okay. 4 seasons ago, Nick Vigil was on the team. I think we kind of sometimes forget, and I know it because when people tell me about what they want the team to do long term, why don't they just not worry about it for 4 or 5 seasons? 4 or 5 seasons? 4 or 5 seasons ago, we still had hope for Kellen Mond. He got benched by the San Antonio Brahmas. We thought that guy could still maybe be a starter someday 4 years ago. I mean, a lot can happen in 4 years is a long, that's a whole cycle of rookie contracts. The guys they just drafted in 4 years from now are going to be in either contract years or gone. This year's rookie class. It's going to be a whole different group of people. So there's a lot of stuff people are having a lot of fun with what would the Olympic team be this year? The rule is you can only send one per team. So if Justin Jefferson were to go, Brian Asamoah can't go. And then there are these insurance things. There's a salary credit if your player gets hurt in the flag football. And it's very important to the league that it's the Summer Olympics, so it's not interfering with the football, with the NFL practice schedules and stuff. So all of that is great. But I guess the place of it in the international stage, legitimizing flag football as a possible alternative to football, could be the kind of the first normalizing step in the change of the sport that it kind of has been wanting to go to. But conversely, that does not coincide with what else happened at this league meeting. The tush push ultimately was not banned. It fell short, 22-10. The Vikings voted to ban the tush push. 22 teams voted to ban it. 10 teams voted not to ban it. Personally, I'm with the 10 that did not ban it. I don't think there's 2 main arguments here. One is that it's unfair, which I think is kind of stupid. It's all strength. Everybody lines up and pushes on each other. If you get beat by that, they were stronger than you. It's like saying it's unfair if the stronger people win tug of war. That's kind of the whole point. To me, it's the purest form of football. It's a QB sneak, honestly. But the other one is that it's a safety issue. There's been basically no evidence that it is a safety issue. Nobody's been hurt on the tush push. That at least not that I know of. There haven't been any big injuries that happened on that play. The nature of the tush push though is I get why people, if you have somebody pushing on you, you suddenly lose control of how much force you're exerting on something that can put strain on your neck that you're not ready for, your shoulders that you're not ready for. So I kind of get it, which is why I've kind of been look, if it is at a later date determined to be a safety issue, I would not be surprised, and my opinion on this would change, but that has not come out yet. So it's not banned, and I think The other thing is, if it were to be banned, the Eagles would get no worse at QB sneaks, because what made the Eagles good at QB sneaks was not having like Boston Scott push at the end of the thing. It was because they were really, really good at identifying what gap wasn't filled on a goal line front, or what gap was going to be filled by a linebacker or someone either smaller, weaker, or further or lined up deeper. And exploiting that. Plus, Landon Dickerson and Jason Kelce are just really strong dudes. And other teams tried to do it and couldn't replicate it because they didn't have those skills. They weren't that good at it, and they didn't have as strong of dudes. That's why it has not worked out as well for the Bills, who played it, who used it a ton last year as well. Even like Josh Allen, very strong guy, but they don't have the same kind of setup. This is the Eagles being really good at something, and to ban it, I think, would just kind of be a little bit like installing a mercy rule because Rondale Moore is too good at youth football. Like, it's a little bit like you're kind of admitting you just can't hang with it. And it didn't work as well last year, and it's not going to work as well. It's going to continue to go down as teams get better at defending that stuff. But if you take the push out of it, the Eagles will still be good at QB sneaks. That's kind of my point there. And then the last thing is the playoff format isn't changing. That is, let's get into that actually next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Wolves in 6, right? Well, if you think Wolves in 6, or maybe you just want to emotionally hedge against Thunder in 4, or gamble on anything else going on in the NBA or NHL playoffs, or maybe even some NFL futures, you can find it all at FanDuel. It makes it super easy to stay in the game. Even if you miss tip-off, you can still make more or less the same bets as live bets, and the lines will move as the game develops. But if you get in like right after tip-off, it's pretty much the same thing. So if you think that you want to get in on, a Naz Reid fourth quarter clutch 3, or Anthony Edwards over under 30 points, or this many threes, or whatever it is, crazy same game parlays, if your first bet wins, your first $5 bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. That's 40-1 odds. It's the perfect time to sign up. So head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving along here at the Locked On Vikings podcast, the playoff format is not changing, but it probably is going to soon. So we'll get into this, and then afterwards we'll move on to the Everyman Series. But real quick on the playoffs, so this has been a huge national talking point that I have been asked about on national shows, like when I go guest on people's like radio shows or whatever, as well as on Locked On NFL, which you can find me there on Wednesdays. But essentially my take is similar to the tush push. It's a little bit like get good loser. You know that I'm being sincere about that, because that's me talking to the team that I cover, right? Like, if anyone should be angry about this, it's the Vikings and Vikings fans. And I don't really get a sense that a lot of Vikings fans are like angry about the playoff format. It was really hard to be angry about the playoff format when they completely, diarrheaed down their pants in week 18 and then diarrheaed down their pants again in the wild card anyways. It's like that. They're not winning that game if they're at home. They sucked in that game. And they're not winning that game against the Lions if they're like, there was no world where they were going to go win that game against the Lions. They came out with that with like unprepared, flat, choked, moment was too big, right? So it kind of felt a little bit like, okay, it changed the playoff format or not. Like, that wasn't going to save the Vikings. That's the way I kind of feel about it. But, the argument is obvious that a 14-3 team having to go on the road. Oh no. Well, if you're a 14-3 team, I don't know. It's like whether you go on the road or at home or whatever, doesn't feel like it needs to be a perfect meritocracy. And that was, we debated a little bit on the Minnesota Football Party earlier this week. And that was kind of what it came down to, was like, well, but that's not rewarding the team that won the most games. It's rewarding the team that won its division over the team that won the most games. And I think that is appropriate and correct. I think, yes, win 14 games, but lose your division. You are less deserving of a home playoff game than somebody who won their division. That's just the way I feel about it. That's the way I feel it should be. I don't think winning your division is necessarily a better barometer for if you're good than winning 14 games is. And, I think the Vikings were a better team than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yes. But I think that winning your division needs to be and should be in the pursuit of an entertaining and, competitively interesting NFL. Winning your division should be a goal that you're supposed to focus on. In 1999, the Green Bay Packers drafted cornerback. You remember what happened in 1998 in the NFC Central? Randy Moss. Randy Moss had his breakout, and the Packers immediately went secondary. Now, it was a big problem for them anyways, but I really like the idea of we have to play Randy Moss twice a year. We got to get this guy we got to get an answer for this guy. I love that. I love off seasons looking at, we're currently in a division. Like a few years ago, the Vikings were in a division with just like this murderer's row of nose tackle, like Akeem Hicks and Kenny Clark. And I loved the fact that the Vikings had to tailor their offseason, had maybe seasons decided by their failure to tailor their offseason to those particular challenges. And I think it's right that they got punished for that. Win your games in the division, win a home playoff game. I think that's great. But the proposal wasn't a proposal that would have sent the Vikings into a home playoff game. It would have reseeded in the second round, which is, I think, a weenie way to do it. I think it's a much more like, it's a pulled punch kind of. So the first round would work the same, and then you would reseed going into the second round. So if the Vikings had won against the Rams and this rule were in effect, the Vikings would have been the 2 seed hosting the newly 3-seeded Eagles, and the Rams would have traveled to Detroit. Or I'm sorry, the Commanders would have traveled to Detroit. And I guess that game would have been the same, but it would have been Eagles at Vikings, and that would have been the way it went, instead of Vikings at Eagles, which is how it would have worked. Was Rams at Eagles, right? And that would have been the Vikings instead. Again, I think that would have sucked. I don't think that it makes it feel any more fair. Ooh, you won 14 games, but you lost your division, and now the Eagles have to come to Minnesota and play at you. But the Eagles won 13 games and their division. Why are we punishing them now? Like, that doesn't feel the same to me, off of just like that doesn't feel intuitively more fair. And it is needlessly more complicated. It's like when they changed the pass interference rules a bunch of, not the time they made it like reviewable, but the time they tried to make like a football move like an actual phrase, and the time, and like whenever rules become more complicated without becoming more intuitive, it just doesn't work. And this feels like it would be that. So I am pretty excited that didn't happen. I don't think the playoff format needs to change. However, the scuttlebutt is that the league is moving to an 18-game season sooner rather than later. That feels like a matter of when, not if. And when that happens, they will reconsider the idea of a different playoff format after an 18-game season. They probably will have to schedule-wise anyways, because an 18-game season is more grueling. And they'll probably have to have an extra bye in there for everybody. And then I don't know, like, if they're going to expand the playoffs again, which I don't think that they should. I think it already is pushing it. I was in favor of the 7 seed. I like the 7 seed. But I think an 8th seed is a bridge too far. But either way, I think the way that this year's playoffs played out was perfectly fair, from tush push to playoff format. I think it all worked out fine. But next up, we will dabble in the Everyman Series, and a player who you might not have even noticed was on the Vikings. That'll be next. A couple years ago, the Colts and Patriots traveled to Frankfurt, Germany for the first ever game in Germany as a part of the ever-expanding international program. It is a game that if you watched, you probably regret. It was a 10-6 slop fest. I think the Colts won, but God, it was horrible. But there were 2 players there that experienced a strong sense of familiarity. One was Marcel Dabo, who was a safety for the Colts that grew up in Germany. And the other was a practice squad running back that felt right at home. Xavier Scott was an Army kid, so he was always moving all over the place as he grew up. He calls Fort Hood home, and he was a very exciting football player in Texas. So it was pretty quick that the D1 dreams started to kind of take hold. And then his sophomore year, his dad got deployed. He was in the Army to Bavaria, Germany. This is his junior year. If you listened to yesterday's episode of the Everyman Series with Rondale Moore, you know that the junior year of high school is the most important one for recruiting. That is the one that most recruiters are going to watch before they decide if they're going to even try to meet up with you and start the process of interviews and workouts and courting and all of the other stuff that happens on the recruiting trail. If you miss your junior year, like Rondo Moore did, it can do a lot of damage to your recruiting process. If you move to Bavaria, you kind of get out of the radar of everybody else. Xavier Scott looks back on this experience fondly now because you get real close to that team when you're taking 12-hour bus rides across Central Europe. You're sleeping on gymnasium floors between your games as part of DODEA. It's the Department of Defense Education Activity. It's the department of, basically keeping kids who are on military bases, giving them access to high school sports. So you go from base to base and all the bases play each other. And that is like a football league, a sports league, right? So it means that every away game is like across nations. You don't just get to go play the school next door. And it builds this like camaraderie and this experience, and it proves to Xavier Scott how much he loves football. You go through all of that and you don't come away from it like resenting the sport, or like you come away with it fully, like no question about it. You're going to go do this again if you have to. He does go back to the United States his senior year, if I recall. But because of all of this, no offers. Of course not, right? Nobody's looking in Germany for their recruiting trip. Like Texas is not sending scouts to Germany for this. Maybe they should be, because we do find a few players this way. Patrick Jones was the same way. And he only got recruited because he ended up in Virginia by his junior year. This is kind of the opposite situation. So no offers, 0 stars, 0 offers, 0 recruiters, nothing. This is a chip on his shoulder. And he will go to Premier Players International, which is like a recruiting event, and then a DODEA recruiting thing. And there, this dude rattles off crazy stats, especially for a high school player. It's, he runs a 4.38 at the PPI Dream Chaser Tour after doing some DODEA track stuff. He was like a track guy, but at the Dream Chaser Tour, he ran a 4.3840 and won one-on-one reps against players who did have offers and even scholarships from like Ohio State and Bama. So he kind of proved his mettle, got on everyone's radar, and then the phone immediately blows up. Like 0 to 100 in 6 seconds, he's got scholarship offers from a bunch of D1 schools. He ends up getting some attention from the bigger schools like Ohio State and Alabama, but he'll ultimately end up at UConn for a few years and sort of find a sense of home there. This is a kid that moved around a lot, and not until college did he get a real sense of like a home base. And by the way, in college football, you don't necessarily have to travel as much as a European kid who's got to go from Germany all the way across to like a game in the UK or whatever all the time. UConn is going to go play other schools in the Northeast. Like, it's pretty normal. After his time at UConn, he will transfer to Maine, but when he transfers to Maine, it's 2020. So they only play 2 games and they're in the spring. So he does another year of eligibility in 2021 to get a full year at Maine. And then he declares for the NFL. From there, he goes undrafted, ends up at the Colts. He won't make the team either time. I think he gets in a little bit as like a kind of practice squad call-up kind of guy, but he's very much an undrafted kind of, got to earn his keep every time kind of guy, trying to make the team as a returner kind of dude. There's a great moment where he scores a touchdown in a preseason game in Arizona or against Arizona. That was last preseason, but he still will travel with the team to Germany to play their game to go be a part of their win in Germany. And then 2024, he has another chance to make the team. He will not make the team. He's cut. And then like 2 days after cut down day, the Vikings bring him to their practice squad. And he now has to try to be the guy for the Vikings. He's another one of these like kind of scat back players that you could call a wide receiver or a running back. I think he's listed as a wide receiver, but it's very much a like, ball in his hands, go try to make stuff happen kind of role. And that's kind of a crowded room with Ty Felton taking some of that role, or maybe it's Rondale Moore, or like who could it be, right? So I think the path to the roster is, again, a pretty uphill battle, but certainly stranger things have happened. I will talk to you all next week. And as always, Skull.